Okay, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we move into the new business public discussion of our agenda. I've already kind of given you the ground rules. So the first one up to bat is Mr. Ginn. Would you come approach the podium? And please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is William Ginn, and I reside at 601 Eddy Drive in Midwest City. I've lived at this address continuously since 1991, and on and off from 1961 to 1991. I have a car, but I choose to ride the number 15 bus occasionally. I've ridden the number 15 bus about once every 2 weeks for the past 25 years. To ride the bus to work or to ride the bus to meetings usually involves arriving quite early because the bus schedule doesn't accommodate my work times. On the ride home, I get off the bus to walk about a half a mile to my home because I do not choose to ride the bus around its circuitous path. It goes all the way around and then would come back by my house. It's quicker for me to walk half a mile from the nearest stop to my home. So what I'm advocating for tonight is I'm advocating for more frequent service to from Midwest City on weekdays. And I also advocate for consideration of route changes to the number 15, which would allow me to disembark near my home without the present circuitous route. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir, for being here.
And I have this to give. Can I leave that?
Again, thanks, Mr. Ginn, for being here. Tegan Malone.
Before our next person speaks, Mr. City Manager, I know in what we just received, while we can't engage with the speaker, there are some issues highlighted that we've had conversations about, including parking for bus transport, and I don't see it specifically referenced here, but the issue with like bicycles and for riders that then take the bus and et cetera. I was wondering if it might be possible to ask if staff could take a look at this and bring this issue back to us with kind of those issues in mind.
Go ahead, Tegan.
Okay, thank you. My name's Tegan Malone. I reside at 3305 Shady Brook Drive. I have spent a lot of time doing things that benefit the city of Midwest City, not necessarily through our city government, through ancillary nonprofits. One of those things that I have done is worked as the president of the Oklahoma Earth Bike Fellowship, which is the group that maintains the trails that we have at Skip. I have written grants on behalf of OEF for the Hospital Authority grant to put more funding into that trail, and have actually put a shovel in the dirt and worked it there to make sure that the trail is usable. Active transportation is something that I have spent a lot of time on this last decade, and it's something near and dear to my heart. I want to tell the city, number one, thank you so much for pulling out of RTA. It was definitely to our benefit to do that. At the moment, we were getting a raw deal on that, so I do appreciate the council's vote on that. But I do want to bring the issue up, like Mr. Ginn just did, that taking a look at the frequency of our bus routes is going to be essential coming up in the next few years. Our income levels are steadily decreasing in this area, and I know people know that I have recently run a campaign and have talked to roughly 15,000 residents in House District 95. The 6 square miles that are here in the older parts of Midwest City, I've spent a lot of time with boots on the ground talking to people, and while transportation isn't a sexy issue, it is wholly necessary, especially in a community like ours. Just for some data to get you there, we have a route, and it does not make a loop, which makes it very difficult for users to have that consistency. It runs every 80 minutes. What we know, and I would like to point out too, that I do sit on the board for our FireLink, and one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we're reducing those calls to 911. I don't know if the council is aware, but every time a 911 call is made and a truck is sent to a location, It costs roughly $1,700. We had a gentleman last year who called 911 89 times. We frequently have people that call 30 or 40 times a year. And when you start doing the math on that, it really begins to add up. I know one of the people that is being served by Firelink right now, she was calling 911 because she needed a ride to her doctor's appointment. There wasn't a bus route or active transportation in the area that could carry her safely and get her to where she needed to be to take care of herself. So just from a financial aspect, it might make a lot of sense right now to take a look at our transportation goals for the upcoming decade and just see what we can do. We can piggyback on the work that has already been done, and it is incredible work, to get locations that are a little bit more effective for us. I know there's plans that are going to be to possibly shut down, correct me if I'm wrong, Route 19? Is that what it was? Yes. There are possibly plans to shut down Route 19 out to Spencer. And so taking a look at what we have and what we can do is going to be very essential moving forward. Just knowing as a former public school teacher, when we have high school students who can't get to work, our income levels are so low right now, sometimes there's not two cars in a household. How do these kids get to work? How do we make sure that they're learning how to become productive adults and citizens in our community? So we've got to kind of take a look at those things. We would also like to really, get that access to Rose State College for students that want to travel across the metro to come to us. And something else to consider is in 2028, we're going to host 2 Olympic events here in Oklahoma City. And as the former events manager at Riversport, I know for a fact that I used to keep Midwest City hotels on the list whenever I would send it out to athletes, especially international athletes, because they're always looking for ways to cut costs. And that's something that they're going to start and continue to look at Midwest City for, because we're just so close, but we're definitely cheaper than what they can find right there at Riversport. I know the Olympics is going to be a one and done thing for us, but whenever we're put on an international stage like that, our visibility will be highlighted even more. So at this point, what I would like to do is we have a very incredible group of mostly retired people, I do believe, maybe. But they have got this group called the Oklahoma, let me get it right, Alliance for Public Transportation. Gotcha. Holler at them, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Byrne. Yes, so I just making a formal request. I know it's something that the city is definitely interested in, absolutely 100%. But just making a formal request to put together a work group of parties that have a vested interest in making sure that we've got the amenities here to serve our community and serve it well. And I would like to ask you to please include the Oklahoma Alliance for Public Transportation, representatives from Rose State College, the possibility of teaming up with the city of Del City to work on those launching spots for park and ride and things like that, as well as SSM Health, and please, please, please include Firelink. It is to our benefit through that organization right there to be able to have one additional resource to point our community members towards to be able to, fulfill the things that they want to in their lives. Thank you so very much for your time, and I'm happy to provide contacts or even offer to assist on this endeavor in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, T. Walter Jacques? Did I pronounce that correctly?
You're close, Mayor Dukes. Walter Jacks, 4832 Kells Drive. I'm in Del City. I've read the rules. I read rule number 1, so I understand. I'm probably not supposed to speak. I got attorneys from my old friend and colleague, Don Meisch. Some folks are going to talk with you tonight about trying to incorporate Route 19 into Route 15, and that extends, those two routes currently connect at Northeast 10th and Douglas. I would like to talk about the opposite end of that route in Midwest City at Sooner and Tinker Diagonal. I rode that bus, as probably very few people in this room have ridden the 15 once or more than once. I have ridden it twice in the last 2 days. I just wanted to get some knowledge about the route. Okay, and the facts I can tell you about it is I rode the 420. I picked it up at Reno and Douglas at 4:20 p.m. yesterday. I rode it to the transit center, observing how many people were on it when I got on it, how many got on, how many got off, how many got on the round trip, etc. I did that again today at 3 p.m., same thing, into the transit center and back. And the stats I got from those two rides, that bus serviced probably 85 unique human beings. And I say that because people who ride the bus generally ride in a habit, the same pattern. They get on, get off the same times every day. So the people who got on at the 4:20 yesterday were not the same people that got on the 3 o'clock today, and I didn't recognize any of them. At any rate, if you take those two runs, those two round trips at non-rush hour times, 85 people from Midwest City, that's over 500 Midwest City residents that get impacted every day. So this really is a very important bus route. This is the livelihood for over 500 people. Okay, I'm speaking tonight out of advocacy for doing something that makes a lot of sense. A very painful part of that bus ride is it goes directly from Sooner and Tinker Diagonal onto I-40 and downtown. Comes back the same way. That stretch of I-40 alone and getting into downtown from Tinker, Diagonal, and Sooner is about 15 minutes on 12 round trips a day. Okay, he's doing that 24 times a day. In other words, a bus is spending 6 hours not taking on passengers, not discharging passengers, just going down I-40. And as a Del City resident, I know when I first moved in 35 years ago, there was a bus, and it was probably this same route, the 15 that came down Reno. It makes all the sense in the world to take that bus from the Tinker Diagonal and I-40, or Sooner Road rather, up Sooner Road, because you have in Midwest City, you are on the east side of Sooner Road, so there are numerous housing developments on the east side of Sooner between Tinker Diagonal and Reno. And as you go west on Reno, there are numerous housing additions there as well. And as you get down toward Bryant, there are a lot of industrial places, which translates to jobs that could be available to Midwest City residents. As you go further, you get to Eastern, you've got Ocana. That's going to be opening soon. That's a lot more jobs. You have numerous brand spanking new hotels down there, which are a lot more jobs. And then you have Bricktown, the entertainment district. In other words, long story short, I think it has a lot of value for Midwest City to try to partner with Del City, get them back into the Embark fold, and share the cost. Because Midwest City, I mean, I don't know how many dollars you're paying for that bus to go up and down I-40 not doing anything for anybody. But if you took it up Sooner and down Reno, Del City should be sharing the cost with you, and that might be a win-win for both Midwest City and Del City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Mr. Goldschlager.
Glenn Goldschlager, 1409 Evergreen Circle, Midwest City. First of all, would you please stop smiling when we talk about traffic circles? Traffic circles are incredibly less expensive than a controlled intersection. I'm not talking about a couple of $100. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper to build. A traffic circle is also over 85% safer because you do not get T-boned. So please stop thinking about, laughing about it, because this is talking about a whole lot of money. And we're not even talking about the fact of what it costs to maintain a controlled intersection. This is a bunch of money. As for the survey, we do have an incredible police department. When you look around the country, people look at parks and go, well, let's just take some money from the police department, let's spend it on the parks. Or let's do quality of life stuff, let's do something else with it. We've seen it in cities around Oklahoma and around this country and see what happens. It's expensive to run a high-quality police department. It's not free. A police car is very, very expensive, and we buy 7 of them every year. Training our officers is very, very expensive. It's not cheap. So people need to think about that. As for code enforcement are not police officers. You call a police officer out, you get an instant result. You get somebody arrested, you get somebody talked to, something happens. Your neighbor's lawn's too long. He does not instantly go out and have it mowed. He has to go out and serve notice. And it will grow a couple of inches while you're serving notice. Then he serves another notice, and it grows a couple of more inches. And then we send somebody out to mow it, and now you've got a bunch of hay. Now, after the third or fourth time of mowing it, the hay gets into nice and everything's fine. But we talked about education during the community survey. Code enforcement is an education. We need to explain to people what code enforcement can and can't do. They are not police officers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Goldschlager. Aaron Hale?
He was the applicant, so I think he thought he had to.
Oh, okay. Hiawatha Bolden. Did he bail? Oh, there you are.
Good word, sir. I agree. Rotaries are awesome. I'm Hiawatha Bolden. I live at 9104 Oak Hollow Drive here in Midwest City. I've lived there about, I'm going to say 30 years, 31 years or so. I could easily say ditto. I'm here to represent the Alliance for Public Transportation. I've actually spent some time with them for the past 20-something years in behavioral health while I was with Eagle Ridge Institute. Public transportation. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I could tell time by the buses. I never saw a yellow school bus when I was living there. I took public transportation to high school, 4 high schools on all 3 sides of the city of Chicago. They even funded our tokens for us to go. That was all of our high schools. Public trans will bring Midwest City into the 21st, 22nd, 23rd century. American Glass, the protein plant, Tinker, all of the different places, the new health center. We need to have stops for people to get to work. I worked for the drug court for about 3 years after I left Eagle Ridge. I could have easily taken the bus from here down to the depot and walk over to the county courthouse, but I would have been late. So I didn't. But we need to do that. Fred Factory has people that could go to work if they had a bus out there. Mary Mahoney, they have people out there. We have people that live in these areas, and just as Jock said, who I've worked with for several years, when the bus is on I-40, it is not picking up clients. And we need to pick up clients. And most people would do that. I was a attendance and a officer over at Wright Business School, if you all remember that school. There were so many students that would sign up, get their loans, pay for these funds, and then have to drop out because they couldn't get to school. Everyone doesn't have vehicles. But if we've got the buses, they will use them once they know they're there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Hiawatha. That's the last one.
I would encourage, I know we can't interact, but on the handout, there's a deal at the bottom of the second page, talks about Oklahoma City moves plans from 2023. It is on the internet. Actually, I think it's 22, but you can pull it up, and there's all sorts of demographics about what they're talking about. So I would encourage the rest of the council to get on there. It's 500 pages long, but we're worried about 15 and 19. You know, I hate to say I don't care about the village or stuff like that, but there is information on there that talks about what they're talking about. So,
It's a definite need, and we need to start expanding that.
but I'd encourage you all to pull it up and at least read that part.
Okay, we've reached the end of our public discussion, and I will adjourn the Midwest City Council agenda and open the Midwest City Municipal Authority. We do have a consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so the trustees, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any trustee requests to discuss an item, or if there's not unanimous consent, then the item will be removed and heard in regular order. Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. We do have one discussion item. Mr. Lyons.
Discussion, consideration, possible action approving a work order number 2400949 to the Master Services Agreement with Garver LLC in the amount of $417,245 to provide engineering services related to the Water Resources Recovery Facility Master Planning Project. Mr. Streets.
Honorable Mayor and Council, appreciate the opportunity to have this agenda item in front of you because this work order is very important to the future success of our plant, solving some of the problems that we have. Obviously, this is just one part of a much bigger plan for us to help address issues related to wastewater in our system, but this is the heart of it. This is our treatment facility. As a part of that, we obviously have some funds that Carrie has worked hard to secure associated with microplastics. In order to get those funds actually in our pocket and help solve some of those problems of the plant, it requires this work order to be executed. The good news is we have a great relationship with the engineer, Garver Engineering, and actually a representative from Garver tonight, if you don't mind raising your hand and standing, Bryce Callies, who actually is a Midwest City resident, is here to represent Garver in case you have any questions. But I'd love to give Carrie, if you would allow us, give Carrie just a couple of minutes to give a little more detail about what that work order might incorporate in case you do have questions or need more context.
So this is, we've talked a lot about master plans, and you're probably thinking, okay, another one. Well, this is part of our wastewater master plan. This is looking particularly at our treatment plant. It's designed for a certain period of time, period of growth. That current design, designed to 2030. It's now time to start planning for the next 20 years at that plant. What does our growth look like? What do we need for treatment capacity, both in liquids and solids, in addition to how do we deal with our media issues? So that is what this project is, and because it's looking at the plant holistically, some of the microplastics funds that we received, which are 100% principal forgiveness, can go towards this project. So it's not 100% city funds. It's actually probably a little bit more like 60-40, so 40% city funds going towards this project. So we tried to be as wise with our dollars as we can, recognizing that we need to start planning for the next 20 years at the WRF and make sure we can continue to treat our wastewater as it comes through our system.
I just want to make a comment, observation, etc. The two of you and the folks that you represent with Public Works, and this being an example of planning ahead in anticipation and figuring out the holistic approach of what our needs are and so forth, are, in my opinion, the reason why there was such a high 90% satisfaction rating for the Public Works Department. And so I just want to say thank you while you're both standing up here. And I hope that you convey that heartfelt thank you to the members of the Public Works Department and remind them that they were by far, from what I saw and recall, the greatest satisfaction level on that survey from our citizens. So I think that speaks volumes. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention that and to tell you how much I appreciate, again, the planning and the looking ahead. Because I will say, particularly early on, when I joined council years ago, and I think Matt and Pat being the other quote-unquote senior members on this horseshoe can speak to this too. It wasn't a proactive approach that we were at necessarily at that time. It was more reactive, and usually it was because something had already, excuse the phrase, blown up. So again, I mean, I just want to say, and this speaks to city leadership also, because I know that you're directing this, Mr. Lyons. So I just want to say thank you at this point, to everybody who's involved with this proactive planning thought process, because it means so much. And with that, I would move to approve this item.
I have a question. Carrie,
Yes, sir.
the 417,000, you mentioned that there's federal funds that are going to go into this too.
Yes, sir.
Is the 417K Midwest City's share out of pocket, or is that going to be diluted by the federal funds?
Yeah, that will be diluted by the federal funds. So the 417 is the total cost of the work order. And then of that, about 60% of it, and I'm sorry, I don't have the exact figure,
okay.
but about 60% of that is covered by the microplastics loan, 100% for forgiveness loan, and then the rest is made up with wastewater funds.
And I know you can answer it, or maybe the engineer can. When do we feel like we're going to get a grip on this microplastics issue to where we have a comfort level that we're not endangering the public unnecessarily?
I'd like you to clarify when you say microplastics, specifically, are you talking about the media degradation?
Yeah, the nanoparticles of plastic that are being browned over and over and over again and are not currently being caught in our water treatment facilities. This is a national problem. You've talked about it before, and I assume that that's what, when you mentioned the plastics issue, that's basically what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so there's twofold to that in the microplastics. So some of it will be looking at influent and what's coming into our plant and how well are we removing those. The other is, what is the plant contributing because of the type of media that we're using. And our pilot study that's going on right now will be wrapping up at the end of March. It's been about a year. We're getting close to a year now. We're almost there.
Okay.
Garver's gonna be looking at that data and processing it, and we're gonna be looking to see if our new pilot media is giving us as much treatment, if not better treatment, than the previous suspended media. If we can remove the suspended media, there's a possibility that a lot of the microplastics that are being contributed to our system can be removed. And then we'll look at other methods. If there are other sources of microplastics, that will be part of this study as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I do have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thanks, Paul and Carrie. Appreciate it.
And I would like to say that the grant money that she gets, they don't come to us trying to hand us money. She has to go out and find these grants and apply for the grants and go through all the exercise to acquire those. So good job, Carrie, on this one.
Thank you very much. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also point out, actually, in this particular case, Carrie was the one that helped pursue it, but the person that actually put this on our radar is Mr. Bryce Calley, is the guy that actually lives in Midwest City working for Garver.
Yeah.
So we're grateful to you.
Good job, Bryce.
Thank you all.
He has a bow tie on tonight, too, I noticed.
I told you, Mr. Street. We now move into new business public discussion. Does anyone have anything to bring before the authority? Hearing or seeing none, we are hereby adjourned. I call to order the Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority. We do have a consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so the trustees, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any trustee requests to discuss an item or unanimous consent cannot be received, then the item will be removed and heard in regular order. Chair to entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We do have one discussion item. Mr. Lyon.
Discussion, consideration of possible action approving a loan agreement in terms for the Hospital Authority to loan Soonertown Center 2, the sum of $5,800,000 in the construction loan for the improvements to be made to the former Dick's Sporting Goods and delegating to the general manager for the hospital authority the ability to execute all necessary documents. Mr. Mosh.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Your idea. So the Memorial Hospital Authority, we've entered into discussions with Centertown Center 2. We've reached an agreement, and those terms were presented to you. Basically, this would be a 3-year loan at $5.8 million. We would earn 4.5% interest on that for that loan, which would end up us, for the hospital authority, making between $500,000 and $750,000 over the lifetime of the loan. We're not giving them $5.8 million. It's at a drawdown type situation. So as costs come in, they will submit those to the general manager. We'll make sure that then the funds are expended. Once that money has been expended, then the interest starts accruing. We get paid on that at the end of every year. And then at the end of that 3-year period, this will convert, and Centertown Center 2 would be required to go out and seek a conventional loan to cover that, so that the hospital authority is repaid in full. So as I said, it's a 36-month note, and the hospital authority will be making some money on this. And if you recall, we discussed maybe going out and getting a conventional loan from a bank that would cost not only Centertown Center 2 interest at a higher rate, but us as well, interest at a higher rate. This way we get to make some money on the deal.
Here's my only concern about this, Don, and I appreciate this structure. We had this conversation when this came up before. There's, from what was stated in the materials, I mean, there's one tenant that's sort of a bird in the hand, and then a possible second tenant, but we still have to get the renovations done before that tenant can take the leasehold and et cetera. And I know it's a drawdown loan, but my concern is there weren't any sort of benchmarks for the timing. I mean, we've got a time for the period of the loan, and maybe it's not necessary, but my concern is, you know, yes, we reached this agreement, but then it gets slow played on the actual construction work being completed, which then causes the bird in the hand tenant to fly elsewhere, et cetera. Like, is there any validity to that concern, or do you feel like the way we have this structured is sufficient and
in my
everybody's
opinion, our
motivated?
structure is well put together. While we did not put a specific time frame in here, I can assure you that construction is going to be done very rapidly. And after meeting, I can probably explain that to you further.
Okay, that was my concern, is whether the terms of the loan needed anything
Right. No.
added. But with the assurance that everybody's duly motivated type of thing. Rick, I'm deferring to you. This was an idea that you had, so do you want to place a motion on this one? And motion to approve. There it is.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? On,
I'm sorry. Interest rate was 4.5%. Okay.
all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. We,
Something, and I
Yes.
want to thank the city staff to get this going, because we've been under the gun for over a year, 2 years, to get something in there. And I know we're not ready to release the name, but I appreciate all the effort.
duly noted.
And good idea, Mr. Favors.
We now move into new business public discussion. Does anyone have anything to bring before the authority? Hearing or seeing none, we do have an executive session. Mr. Lyon, you want to read it?
Discussion, consideration, possible action of one, entering into executive session is allowed under 25 OS Section 307B3 to confer on matters pertaining to purchase or appraisal of real property in Carburetor Alley in an open session, authorizing the general manager administrator to take action as appropriate based on the discussion in executive session.
Chair to entertain a motion to go into executive session. I've got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in executive